You think you know people. You do not. Not yet. The most dangerous moves in human psychology happen so quietly, most people never even see them coming. Pay attention. That changes right now. 1. Your brain treats familiarity as truth. Here's one of the most dangerous glitches in the human mind. Repetition makes things feel real, whether they are or not. This is known as the illusory truth effect, a well-documented cognitive phenomenon where exposure to the same information over and over gradually convinces your brain that it's accurate, regardless of facts. Advertisers, politicians, and abusers all exploit this. The partner who keeps calling you too sensitive isn't just venting, they're running a campaign. The politician who repeats the same slogan at every rally isn't lazy, they're conditioning. Your brain does not fact-check familiarity. It doesn't ask, is this true? It asks, have I heard this before? And the more times the answer is yes, the more it nods in agreement. This is why correction rarely works once misinformation takes hold. The fact that you've now heard the lie and the correction means both feel familiar, and your brain struggles to reliably tell them apart. 2. Silence is a power move, not an absence of communication. Most people think silence is the absence of control. It's actually one of its most potent forms. When someone goes quiet, stops responding, withdraws without explanation, gives you the cold shoulder, your brain immediately enters a distress loop. It seeks closure. It replays the last conversation. It searches for what you did wrong. That frantic searching puts the silent person in complete control, and they haven't said a single word. This is why the silent treatment is psychologically more destabilizing than outright conflict. Conflict gives you something to respond to. Silence gives you nothing, and your own imagination rushes in to fill the gap, usually in the most self-blaming direction possible. In dark psychology, silence is currency. The person who can tolerate withholding communication the longest almost always wins the power dynamic because the other person's desperation for resolution pushes them toward concession and apology, even when they did nothing wrong. 3. Most people don't manipulate you on purpose, and that makes it worse. Here's the fact that social media never tells you. The majority of psychological manipulation isn't calculated, it's habitual. People who were raised in chaotic households where guilt-tripping, emotional withdrawal, or emotional explosions were normalized simply learned these behaviors as tools for getting their needs met, and they continue using them without conscious awareness. This matters for 2 reasons. First, it means you can't spot a manipulator by looking for a villain with a plan. Many of the most controlling people in your life genuinely believe they're the victim in every situation, because, from their perspective, they are. Second, it means confronting the behavior rarely produces the dramatic recognition you're hoping for. You're not exposing a scheme, you're pointing at someone's entire learned emotional architecture. Understanding this doesn't make the behavior okay. It makes it harder to dismiss and harder to escape, because the person causing harm may genuinely love you and genuinely not see what they're doing. 4. Emotional exhaustion lowers your resistance to control. Manipulators, whether consciously or instinctively, tend to escalate their demands precisely when their targets are most depleted. This is no coincidence. It is a dark feature of how the human brain works under fatigue. When you are mentally and emotionally exhausted, your prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for rational judgment, boundary setting, and critical thinking, goes partially offline. Tired people comply. Grieving people believe. Overwhelmed people stop questioning. This is why so many high-control relationships, cults, and exploitative workplaces run on an engine of manufactured chaos and exhaustion. When there is always a crisis, always something new to process, always an emotional fire to put out, there is no bandwidth left to step back and see the pattern. You are too busy surviving each individual moment. The next time you find yourself agreeing to something you'd normally refuse, ask,
Am I rested? Your answer may explain more than you realize.
5. Kindness with strings attached is a control mechanism. We're taught from childhood that kindness is virtuous, no conditions required. But dark psychology reveals that generosity can be weaponized through what is called transactional benevolence, the practice of giving in ways that quietly install a debt. The person who always offers to help but keeps a meticulous internal score sheet. The partner who recites every sacrifice they've made the moment you try to assert yourself. The friend who makes you feel guilty for not reciprocating at the exact level they chose to give. These individuals exploit a core human instinct, reciprocity, to keep others bound to them. The insidious part is how difficult it is to identify in real time. The gifts feel real, the help is real, the affection is real, right up until it is called in as a debt. By then, the web is already woven, and saying no feels like ingratitude rather than self-respect. 6. People stay in toxic situations because pain feels familiar, not because they're weak. One of the most misunderstood aspects of dark psychology is why intelligent, capable people remain in abusive relationships, exploitative workplaces, or destructive friendships long after the warning signs are obvious. The common explanation, weakness, is wrong, and it's harmful. The real mechanism is neurological familiarity. The human nervous system calibrates to the emotional environment it grows up in. If chaos, criticism, withdrawal, or intermittent affection was the atmosphere of your childhood home, your nervous system registers that pattern as home, as normal, as safe, even as love. When an adult relationship recreates those same dynamics, the brain doesn't sound an alarm, it sounds a recognition. This is why the question, "Why don't they just leave?" misses the point entirely. For many people, leaving doesn't feel like freedom, it feels like falling off a cliff into the unknown, which neurologically it is. 7. The person who controls the narrative controls the room. In any relationship, group, or organization, the most powerful person is rarely the one with the title. It's the one who controls how events are framed, how history is remembered, and what stories get told. This is called narrative control, and it is one of the most underappreciated forms of psychological dominance. Watch what happens in a conflict between two people. One of them tells the story first, louder to more people. That version becomes the default truth, not because it's accurate, but because the brain defaults to the most repeated, most emotionally compelling account it hears. The other person, arriving late to the narrative with a more nuanced explanation, is already fighting uphill. This is why manipulators often move quickly to cast themselves as victims before anyone else can speak. Once the story is set, reframing it requires extraordinary effort, and most people simply don't have the stamina. 8. Flattery works even when you know it's fake. This one is both darkly funny and deeply uncomfortable. Research confirms that even when people are fully aware that a compliment is insincere, even when they consciously acknowledge that someone is flattering them to get something, the brain still responds positively. The pleasant neurochemical reaction fires anyway. Salespeople, manipulators, and charming personalities exploit this relentlessly. It doesn't matter if you know you're being buttered up. Your emotional brain doesn't get that memo. It just registers, "This person said something nice," and releases a small hit of warmth regardless. This is why "I know you're just saying that" doesn't fully protect you. Knowing the trick exists doesn't make your brain immune to it. 9. Most liars don't know they're lying. This is perhaps the most destabilizing of all the dark psychology facts. Research suggests that humans lie far more than we consciously acknowledge, averaging 1 to 2 lies per day. And a significant portion of those lies are told automatically, without deliberate choice. The brain edits, smooths, and embellishes in real time to preserve social harmony and self-image, often without the person registering that they've departed from the truth at all. The alarming subset of this is called motivated reasoning, the tendency to genuinely believe whatever version of reality best protects our self-concept. The person who truly believes they never said that hurtful thing. The colleague who genuinely remembers contributing more to a project than they did. The parent who is sincerely certain they were always fair. They're not acting, they're not strategically deceiving you. Their brain has simply revised history to keep their self-image intact, and you cannot argue with someone who believes their own distortion. 10. Labeling people changes how they behave. The moment you consistently label someone brilliant, difficult, generous, troublemaker, their behavior begins to drift toward that label. This is called the Pygmalion effect in its positive form and the Golem effect in its negative form, and it operates almost entirely below conscious awareness. Teachers who are told a student is gifted unconsciously give them more attention, more challenge, and more encouragement, and the student performs better as a result, independent of their starting ability. Managers who are told an employee is a problem performer unconsciously give them less support and more scrutiny, and the employee's performance declines. This is a form of psychological manipulation that doesn't require a bad actor. It just requires a label and a person willing to live up to that label. 11. Triangulation keeps you focused on the wrong threat. One of the most elegant manipulation tactics in dark psychology is triangulation, the strategic introduction of a third party, a person, a comparison, or a vague threat to destabilize a relationship and redirect your emotional energy. A partner mentions that someone at work finds them attractive, just casually, just once. A manager praises a colleague specifically when you've just raised a concern. A parent tells you how well your sibling turned out. The effect is immediate. You stop thinking about the original issue and start thinking about the competitor. Your energy shifts from asserting yourself to proving yourself. And the person who introduced the triangle, they've stepped neatly out of the conflict and watched you fight a shadow.
12. Your brain is wired to follow authority even when it disagrees. Stanley Milgram's now famous experiments in the 1960s produced one of psychology's most disturbing findings. The majority of ordinary people, when instructed by someone perceived as a legitimate authority, would administer what they believed to be severe electric shocks to a stranger simply because they were told to. Most of them were visibly distressed. Most of them asked if they should stop, and most of them continued anyway. This wasn't cruelty, it was something more uncomfortable, the deep human wiring to defer to authority as a survival mechanism. We are social animals. Challenging authority has historically come with steep social and physical costs. Our brains carry that history, and in everyday life, this means we follow instructions from doctors, managers, governments, and confident strangers far beyond the point where our own judgment tells us something is wrong, simply because the social cost of disobeying feels higher than the moral cost of complying. 13. The reason you can't convince someone of a fact they didn't reason into. There's a principle rarely taught explicitly, but devastating in its accuracy. If someone arrived at a belief through emotion, identity, or social belonging rather than through logic, you cannot argue them out of it with logic. The belief was never a conclusion. It is a feeling wearing the costume of one. When a belief is tied to someone's sense of who they are or where they belong, presenting contradictory evidence doesn't trigger an update, it triggers a defense. The brain experiences the factual challenge as an identity threat, and the defense mechanism fires faster and harder than any rational reconsideration. This is why heated debates rarely change minds in the room. They change minds in the quiet afterward, if ever, when the person is alone and no ego is at stake. 14. The person who seems most confident is often running the longest bluff. Confidence is one of the most successfully faked signals in human interaction, and the brain is spectacularly bad at detecting the performance. Research on the Dunning-Kruger effect, reveals that the people with the least knowledge or competence in a given area consistently rate their own ability the highest because they lack the very framework needed to recognize what they don't know. Meanwhile, the people who are most genuinely skilled tend to be acutely aware of the gaps in their understanding and come across as hesitant or uncertain. The result? In rooms where real expertise is hard to verify, the most confident voice wins by default. The loudest, most unqualified person in the meeting often gets the most airtime, the most nods, the most influence, while the genuine expert hedges, qualifies, and loses the room. Power and competence are not the same thing. In any environment where confidence is taken as proof of quality, this gap is being exploited constantly. 15. The deepest form of control is making you police yourself. The final and perhaps most profound dark psychology fact is this: the most sophisticated control systems don't need to watch you constantly, threaten you continuously, or remind you of the rules. They install the rules inside you so that you enforce them on yourself. This happens in abusive relationships where you begin pre-editing your words before speaking, anticipating anger. It happens in high-control organizations where employees self-censor ideas before they even surface, knowing what the culture tolerates. It happens in societies where laws are rarely invoked because the citizens have already internalized the boundaries. The controlling party barely needs to act anymore. You have become your own warden. The philosopher Michel Foucault called this internalized surveillance, and it may be the most efficient form of control ever developed. It costs the controller nothing. It costs you everything: your spontaneity, your creativity, your authentic voice, slowly traded for the quiet of not triggering a reaction. And the cruelest part? It often happens so gradually you don't notice you've changed until the day you try to be yourself and realize you've forgotten how. Final thought. Understanding dark psychology is not a license to distrust everyone. It is a flashlight in a dark room, not to see monsters, but to stop mistaking shadows for furniture. The people in your life who use these dynamics are, most of them, doing exactly what was done to them. The person most harmed by these patterns is often the one running them. Awareness doesn't just protect you from others, it protects others from the version of you that acts on autopilot. Knowledge is protection. Stay aware.
Everything you just heard is already happening around you. Now you know, and you cannot unknow it. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to wake up.